Good morning. Over the holidays, my psychologist brother and I were discussing Carl Jung and some of his theories on archetypes. And this made me think about schemas and how other logic codes are dealt with in QAD. So I thought today I would talk about these devices. In QAD, as with any ERP system, the way you define your data patterns, categories, subsets, etc. is going to play heavily on your ability to understand your ERP system and the information that it contains. Schemas are, as we shall see, used everywhere in QAD. As always, there are many terms and definitions that are associated with a subject like schemas and logics that we should be familiar with. Remember, if you don't know the meaning of a phrase or term I use, please look it up on Google or go to the knowledge base on the QAD website or send us an email at 32soft. Here are just a few of the things we'd like to cover today. First, we'd like to introduce some concepts around the use of schemas, then cover some of the specific devices within QAD that utilize schema and other logic tools. The need to organize information has been around mankind since the beginnings of civilization. In 1989, Tim Berners-Lee wrote a proposal on how he thought CERN, the European Organization of Nuclear Research, could distribute information and still prevent data loss. He suggested a mesh or a web of links of available knowledge in CERN and who was responsible for what and who could gain access. His proposal struck a chord, and Berners-Lee was commissioned by CERN to build the system. This would evolve eventually into the World Wide Web. He also invented the hypertext markup language, HTML, to browse the web. Again, as we mentioned in our last webinar, if you're going to consider yourself a professional in any field, you should understand the processes of what you're studying and all of the individual contributors to that study. Here's a list of some of the significant contributors to schema development. Individuals such as Carl Linnaeus, George Boyle, Fifi Lee of Google, Carl Jung, Alan Turing, even Elon Musk, considering how much he has been in the news lately. One of the primary leaders in the cognitive revolution was Jerome Bruner. Bruner received his PhD from Harvard in 1941, then came back to teach in 1945 after having served in the Army Intelligence Corps. Bruner spoke of modes of representation in which, he said, the brain was a representation machine, a neural matrix consisting of inactive representations, those that occur from birth to 3 when we feel the world, to ionic representations, or the ability to represent the world visually, 1 to 5 years, to symbolic representation, that is, language and math as used in adult life. So what is a schema? A schema is a cognitive framework, a concept that helps organize and interpret information. It is a way we name, use, and control the data we have in our ERP systems. All are based on certain concepts that are built up from these ideas of representation. Data in our systems are simply nuggets of information about something or some objective reality. The thoughtful evaluation of our terms, numbers, and hierarchies can go a long way to improving the use of our ERP systems. Remember, all your schemas are representations, according to Bruner. How schemas are defined depends on the context. Are they database schemas? Are they SQL schemas? Are they AI schemas or education or psychological schemas? The word schema comes from significant in terms of reference, meaning, and truth, as applied to several distinct disciplines, including philosophy, linguistics, and computer science. What are some of the aspects of a schema? Schemas, again, affect the way we notice things, how we interpret things. Schemas act as filters for our reality. Schemas help us forecast and predict what's going to happen. They help us remember and recall things. They are normally a part of what is called the attribution of cause, or how people act. Here is a list of notable XML schemas. These are used on the internet to help define how to formally describe data elements. XML documents are used for a wide range of purposes, such as syndication, general exchange, storage of data, and all in a standard format. Schemas address several logical and hardware considerations, including redundancy, operational efficiency, interpretability, performance, cost, and some aspects of artificial intelligence. A database schema is a formal definition of a database. It is a set of formulas or sentences called integrity constraints that are imposed on the data. Database structures determine how information is going to be processed on your hardware. There are three main types of database schemas: from conceptual, that is high-level, to logical database schemas, which contain all the logic and elements of the process flow, and finally the physical database schema, which defines how the data is going to be stored on the disk. Remember, database design can mean the difference between a query taking seconds versus minutes to hours to be processed. Databases can use various types of schema. A star schema is the simplest style of data mart schema. This is the approach that is most widely used to develop data warehouses and dimensional data marts. Databases can also use a snowflake schema, which is a logical arrangement of tables in a multi-dimensional database. These are referred to as entity relationship diagrams, as they resemble a snowflake shape. You should have a copy of the entity diagram TR for your version of QAD. A database can use a relational model, which is a database based on the association of data sets, first proposed by E.F. Codd in the 1970s. A database can use a network model, which is conceived as a flexible way to represent objects and their relationships. And finally, databases can use a simple flat file, that is, rows and columns, as we are all familiar with Excel. As was pointed out by Brunner, schemas reside in the brain, so they are yours, personally, yours, very individually. They are your interpretation of the external world. They determine how you do things, how you react, and what you are. Self-defined schemas consist of self-schemas, which are basically an organization of information, personal schemas about other individuals, objective schemas regarding objective objects, event schemas, and finally, social schemas, which are based on your expectations of other individuals. Now that we have a pretty good understanding of schemas, we should go through some of the associated vocabulary or terminology around dialectics. Let's start with a symbol. A symbol is a mark or a sign or a word that indicates or signifies or is understood as representative of an idea, an object, or a relationship. Symbols allow people to go beyond what is known or seen by creating linkages between otherwise different concepts and experiences. A study of Carl Jung would be well put to better understand this world of symbols. Here's a word that those of us who spent some time in the military will identify with: hierarchy. It comes from the Greek for the rule of the high priest. It is an arrangement of items, objects, names, values, or categories that are represented by being above, below, or at the same level as another. Hierarchies are an important concept in a wide variety of fields, including architecture, philosophy, design, mathematics, computer science, organizations, and politics. Probably the most famous hierarchy is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It flows from the physiological needs to safety, up to love, to esteem, and finally to cognitive needs such as self-actualization and transcendence. For those of you who might have been in the military or armed services, this would be a familiar point of reference. I have a brother who spent 20 years in the Navy, a grandson who is currently serving in the Navy in D.C. My twin brother and I served in the Army, and my older brother was in the National Guard. So I'm very familiar with the military chain of command. It is important to understand and abide by the chain of command in most all situations in life. This may even manifest itself to some extent in the organizations you work for. Taxonomy is the classification of things that involve organizing forms based on shared characteristics. As mentioned in the earlier section, Carl Linnaeus stands tall in this history. His text classification was developed and set forth in his Systema Nature in 1735, and it's still used today. According to Linnaeus, the taxonomy of living things involves 8 distinct levels. Each is referred to as a taxon. Taxonomy can be termed as a rank based on classifications of organisms from a specific family, order, class, phylum, and kingdom. Or as we'll cover a little bit later, dear King Philip came over for good soup. A framework is a generic term commonly referring to an essential supporting structure upon which other things are built. There are 2 types of frames, both formal and free-form. A model is an informative representation of an object, person, or system that is built upon a framework. The term originally denotes the plans of a 16th century building in England and comes from modula, the Latin. It is the visual representation of a schema of an information flow. Some examples are PERT and network models. There are 3 basic mathematical models: inculations, heuristic, and abstract. I've always thought of ERP, QAD, SAP, Oracle, all the other versions of ERP as simply modeling tools, pre-made code with the possibility to build a facsimile of what is going on in your supply chain inside the computer. It is a mathematical model for the representation of reality. Here's a well-known model from the world of biology referred to as the Krebs cycle. It is the carbonic acid cycle known as TCA. This is a major energy producing pathway for all living bodies. Good example of a model. In mathematics and computer science, an algorithm is a finite sequence of rigorous instructions, typically used to solve a class of specific problems or perform calculations. Algorithms as artificial intelligence will rule our lives and change our reality over the next many years. A pictograph conveys meaning through a pictorial representation of a physical object. Humans have been using pictographs for many thousands of years. Pictographs are often used in writing and graphical systems. Here we see an example of the Inga stone in Brazil. All of us are probably familiar with the hazard pictograms on the thousands of 18-wheelers we see every day. An image is simply a visual representation of something. It can have dimensional, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, or something other to feed into a visual system to convey information. An image can be an artifact such as a photograph or just a simple 2-dimensional picture that resembles a subject. Probably the most familiar image process would be the use of image button on most internet browsers. A mnemonic or a memory device is used as a learning technique that aids in the information retrieval and information retention. Basically, there are 9 types of mnemonics. These can include music, name, word expressions. There are also model, organizational mnemonics, connection, and spelling mnemonics. Here we see some examples of mnemonics, such as those that help us recall planets, Great Lakes, and math expressions. It's an excellent way to remember. An effective information management system is one of the vital skill elements of all human relationships. Sometimes it's inevitable that you have to rely on your memory. Here are 4 common creative memory aids: acronyms, heuristics, abbreviations, and initials. All assist with memory. A note or organizational mnemonic is the way textbooks and lecture notes are normally organized. This is one of my favorite organizational mnemonics, as I use mind maps constantly. A connection mnemonic is information that is remembered by connecting it to something already known, kind of like a network. Examples include remembering the direction of longitude on a globe. It's easier to do when you realize that lines on a globe go north and south, and they are long, and that long goes inside the word longitude. Memory is not an innate skill. It needs to be practiced, and it's hard to really practice memory, but it does have to be used. If you practice all of these principles of memory, it will help you increase your memory by using selectivity, association, visualization, elaboration, concentration, recitation, intention, idiomatic and nomothetic information, feedback, organization, concentrated repetition, and ongoing review. Another handy tool for information control is a tag. A tag is a piece of information that describes the data or content that it is assigned to. Tags are non-hierarchical. Tags are used for internet bookmarks, digital images, videos, files, and so on. Tagging can serve many functions, including classification, marking of ownership, describing of contents, and online identity. There are many types of tagging, from dog tags to OCR tags to RFD tags, triage tags, and even to graffiti. An icon is a compact signal that represents a discrete object. Icons are meant to be read at a glance. An icon is widely used and recognized and well-established representation of an object. Icons were originally conceived as religious in nature, but with the advent of the computer, icons can represent almost anything. Icon design is the process of designing a graphical symbol that represents some real, fantasy, or abstract concept. Other icons represent how programs may function with data or sets or collections of data on a computer system. Lots of money is spent on icon design. Reputations can be won and lost. Here are some examples of icons used in QAD for maintenance, reports, and browses. Emoticons or emojis are intended to be a representation of an emotion. Such an image is normally used to convey a writer's feelings or intended tone, like a facial expression. The first substantial use of icons came from the American computer scientist Scott E. Foreman in September of 1982. I have even seen emoticons incorporated into the QAD interface. The term metadata is used to describe data that provides information about other data. In other words, data about a data. It is descriptive information about a resource. Metadata can provide descriptive, structural, administrative, referential, statistical, and even legal information about data. Just a quick editorial. Data ownership is often overlooked when considering schema data in general. Typically, if it is in the system, it must be somebody else's problem. Data ownership is the act of having legal rights and complete control over a single piece or set of data elements. It defines and provides information about the rightful owner of the data and tells about the acquisition, the use, and distribution policies applied to the data. Here is something that has been in the news of late. Ownership of non-tangible digital assets, or NFTs. With the help of blockchain, non-fungible tokens are cryptographic assets. These NFTs are on a blockchain with unique identification parameters, metadata. This metadata distinguishes NFTs from each other so that they cannot be duplicated. This is the wave of the future. Once the law catches up with technology, data accuracy is the essential standard. Data quality refers to the consistency of data with reality. because more conformity with reality means more accuracy, so that this accurate data satisfies the structure of the information system requirements. Data accuracy means that the error is data-free and has a consistent source of information. You must define your accuracy and understand what it is, where it comes from, and how to continue to improve it through measurement. Remember, any inaccurate raw data introduced into a system will devalue all future work and cause extra resource to discover, analyze, and purge the inaccurate data from the system. A parameter is an arbitrary constant whose value characterizes it as a member of a system. It is normally numeric or otherwise measurable factor forming one of a set that defines a system or a set of conditions for an operation. There are two types of parameters, mathematical parameters and statistical parameters. In computing, an attribute is a specification that defines a property of an object, element, or a file. It may also refer to a set of specific values for a given instance of such. For clarity, an attribute should be more correctly thought of as metadata. An attribute is frequently and generally the property of a property. We will take a quick look at how QAD handles attributes a little later. Since most of our lives in the supply chain revolve around tables of data in our ERP systems, it's very important we pay special attention to how we name or identify those groups of data. As we've talked, a hierarchical file structure can add additional organization to our system. As with file naming, use what makes sense in the data in your organization. You could think about using projects, dates, analyst codes, locations. However, once it is decided upon, it must be consistent. There are some best practices for file naming that we should pay heed to. Just as I mentioned, files should be named consistently. Hell is to pay if this is not done correctly. File names should be short, 25 to 31 characters. Avoid special characters. Use capitals and underscores instead of periods and spaces. Use date formats as appropriate. Include version numbers if possible, and remember to write down your naming conventions in your data management plan. Be aware of each element when you are considering your naming conventions. Such elements as date, short description, work ID, location, project name, sample, analyst, version numbers. All are important to someone in your organization. Here's a quick list of those characters that should not be used in file names. If you need any horror stories, please let me know. In object-oriented program, a field, also called a data member or a member variable, is a particular piece of data encapsulated within a class or an object. There are instance variables and class variables. A record may have several fields or data elements related together. Relational databases arrange these records into data sets. Remember I said at the beginning, if you're going to call yourself a professional, you need to know all of the individuals who contribute to your field of study. Well, George Boole is one of those people. You use him every day. Boole is known for his math logic, not so much his number mathematics, but logic. Boolean logic includes both formal and informal logic. Formal logic is the science of deductively valid inferences or logical truths. It is a formal science of investigating how conclusions follow from premises in a topic-neutral way. Boolean logic is a primary skill required to analyze and assess the data available in QAD. From 3.21.2, transaction by item browse, to 3.1.15, to Boolean selections in views, QAD makes extensive use of Boolean logic. There are approximately 765 browses in QAD and over 250 views. Each column in a browse or a view is basically a schema, by which a Boolean or multiple Boolean arguments can be applied. By using either equal, not equal, contains, range, start, greater than, less than, null, or not null, your skill with Boolean logic will determine how well you manage data. So how does QAD use schemas to input, control, and interpret data? Now that we have discussed some of the concepts revolving around schemas, we'd like to understand how useful schemas can be and how to use them as guidelines when analyzing the vast amounts of information in QAD. Schemas are everywhere in QAD. If we remember talking about organizational schemas earlier, let's consider the menu system in QAD. The menu system has been around since the beginnings of QAD. The QAD menu is based upon ERP business flows, that is APEX, and is defined in 36.4.4.1, system maintenance. Many of us old-timers still use the call number for each menu function, like 1.4, 7.1.1, 5.7. Over the years, the menu system has changed to meet the evolving needs and expansion of QAD functionality. And I would imagine that it will be around forever, but you never can tell. Most of the programmers I have spoken to tell me it will, if for nothing more than a behind-the-scenes schema for data organization. The 36.4.4.13 Program Information Maintenance defines the menu instances and indicates the name of the icon that is displayed next to the program in the .NET user environment. One of the more straightforward uses of schema in QAD is how you name your printers. Basically, we need to determine the kind of printers we have and where they are in the facility. With 36.13.1 printer type maintenance, you can define types of printers in your network using parameter elements including printer type, printer description, initialization codes, and other printer-specific information. A list of common printer types is delivered with the QAD system. 36.13.2 printer setup maintenance is used to define which output device uses which printer type you just defined. We use 36.13.4 printer default maintenance to assign default output devices to individual users or to all users. This is assigning printer schemas to individual users by ID, menu selection, or selection label. There is nothing more frustrating for users than not to be able to print required output from QAD. This can take a lot of maintenance to execute in a timely manner, especially in a complex organization, and we will talk more about user security updates next month. Number range management uses sequence numbers built from one or more segments to help in the definition of schemas in QAD. Each sequence can be built with its own set of characteristics and behavior. The below image illustrates a simple sequence of 5 segments, 3 fixed values, 1 incremental integer segment, and 1 with a date-driven segment. You can be very creative with your schema definitions. You can add and remove segments during the sequence definition, but remember, once a sequence has been used or generated, you cannot change its structure. Some countries impose their own sequencing requirements. These can be related to tax filing or state statutory reporting. In many countries, companies are legally required to prevent gaps in the numbering of official documents. Number range management also supports a variety of sequencing requirements on a global scale, including gap control and multiple ranges for the same document type. Number range management must be specifically enabled to use the number range management functionality. Currently, number range management and sequences are used in several system functions such as shipping, daybooks, whipplot trace, and legal documents. Number range management is very widespread across many functions in QAD. However, caution should be taken with number range management implementation as it requires much thought and application in the setup of schemas. 36.2.21.1 number range management is used to create sequences and define sequence parameters. Number range management creates new numbers that are used to identify specific types of documents. You need to define your schema parameter elements by sequence ID, description, the target data sets, internal or external, and whether to allow discarding and or voiding along with effective and expiration dates. 36.2.21.5 sequence number maintenance defines whether the sequence uses incremental integers, date-driven integers, or fixed values. Auto-numbering in QAD is a function of the system-generated sequence numbers that are used to display formats you define for various elements. These numbers are automatically created for each new record. There are several functions in QAD that allowed for automatic numbering of such items as business relations, customers, employees, revenue contracts, and suppliers. Here's a quick example of one of many auto-numbering functions in QAD. This is for 36.1.4.3.10 business relations. Note the parameters are type, next number, length, suppressing zeros, and active. Auto-numbering helps eliminate errors and enforces consistency and discipline. Another valuable tool for controlling input into QAD is the use of configurable screens. With configurable screens, you can define fields, hide fields, predefine values, define mandatory fields, define frames and fields. In addition, you can control the frame navigation. A very handy tool. With configurable screens, you can choose available fields. You can select the fields you want to display. You can set auto-navigate options on a frame. You can set the tab order. And you can save each configuration independently. One of the primary control functions in QAD with regards to how we apply schemas to our data utilizes the concept of generalized codes. Generalized codes help users deal with both data input and data retrieval. Generally speaking, system and reference fields accept any kind of data as long as it does not exceed the field length. When using generalized code, you can control three different context conditions. First, what acceptable values are for the field. Second, you can get a list of accepted values displayed in a browse. And third, you can have the system give you a list of validated fields. You can also use 36.2.10 generalized code group maintenance functionality to further categorize your generalized codes. Generalized codes require a special validation expression in the data dictionary. You can see if this validation exists against a field by running the 36.2.15 Generalized Code Validation Report. In the assignment of QAD chart of accounts, the system provides for accounts, sub-accounts, cost centers, projects, and supplemental analysis fields, which can be used for additional analytic reporting on transactions. SAF codes are optional, but they allow for the creation of multiple detailed views of accounting data. SAF codes provide flexible financial reporting in that they eliminate the need to create separate chart of accounts. SAF codes are used on standard accounts as they don't work with system accounts. There are either system-assigned SAF codes or user-defined SAF codes, which you can assign to various cost centers and projects. The strength of SAF codes in QAD application is its flexibility. You can configure your business model to generate any number of different types of account information. Generalized, your accounts, sub-accounts, cost centers, and project code combinations can be validated against a GL mask. GL masks validate account element combinations when transactions are posted, thereby preventing any errors. There are a number of schema elements in each table that allow users to self-define fields. is a very effective ways for many schema-related functions. Tables contain user custom character fields, user custom decimal fields, and user custom logical fields. You can also define other user fields if required through configured screens. A default is a pre-selected option adopted by a computer program or other mechanism when a normal alternative is specified by the user or the programmer. Like the default is 50 lines. Defaults can be set up with progress code, configurable screens, QAD's integrated customization toolkit, or Tailor Pro. It is regrettable that the nations of the world have not all agreed upon a standardized way to denote time. But until then, QAD has several ways to deal with the various time formats of your customers and suppliers. When you define users in QAD, you can set a country code and see dates according to that country's format. Serialization could be looked at as the ultimate of schema assignment. Serialization is a process of converting an object or a thing into a stream of bits to be stored so that the object can be transmitted to memory. Serialization is becoming more and more important with the advent of crypto and blockchain. I predict that it will become the standard of electronic data storage and transmission as we approach Industry 4.0. The requirement to trace and control units as a self-defined level is becoming a keystone of the global supply chain. Serial number control is an essential tool for ensuring traceability in manufacturing, barcoding, palletization, and digitization. Serialization's main purpose is to save the state of an object at a point in time in order to be able to recreate it and understand its circumstance in the inventory flow. Your serialization control defines control settings for the serialization module. Serialization capabilities enable companies to manage high volumes and utilize tracking and tracing of mass serialized product. License plate inventory management refers to material handling activities by identifying inventory with a unique license plate or container which holds one or more serial numbers. This is the future of containerization. Reason codes are used in many security functions to enhance the recording of schema data. Reason codes are used throughout QAD, including such functions as sales orders, purchase orders, returns, and shop floor reporting. Reason codes are also used if you have enabled change tracking and as several optional modules such as whip-lot trace, electronic signatures, and shipment performance. There are several reason code types used by the system, which include downtime and reject codes, but you can create your own. Just be consistent. Master comment maintenance is a major way to store standard textual information for schemas in QAD. It can be retrieved later in various functions throughout the system. I love that QAD is so flexible. Master comments are then transmuted to transactional comments in various maintenance functions. Master comment maintenance can be found throughout QAD from 2.5.12 to 4.12 to 1.12 and others. Transactional comments are either input manually or created from master comment templates and are assigned to comment index fields in the tables for maintenance programs as appropriate. Here's a list of all those functions in QAD that use transactional comments. It's pretty ubiquitous throughout QAD. Anyone not using transactional comments to their max is not using QAD to its full power. Transactional comments can also lend themselves to even more efficient processing of your QAD data. You can specify master or transactional comments per specific requirements, such as customer service language requirements. There are also options for printing to documents as required, as exhibited here for call maintenance. You can print comments on an invoice, you can print with transactions, you can print customer reports or problem or internal reports. It's very handy for all data. A process is a structured set of activities designed to accomplish a specific objective, kind of a global schema. Process maps in QAD can be used to illustrate and document principal business processes or operational processes within the QAD application. They can also provide graphical navigation to required functionality for the process flow. I would refer you to Scott Delecke's paper from last year's Fall MUG conference on process mapping. When we covered attributes as a general concept earlier, I mentioned that we'd come back to where attributes are located in QAD. QAD has an extensive set of tools that make schemas, serialization, and data retrieval very effective, but they must be implemented and executed with care. I had the honor of working with Guido van der Mark and the QAD development team that wrote the QAD attribute functionality back in the early 2010 period. So I can say with confidence it is probably the finest attribute management application out there. Item attributes and quality control addresses attributes in two different avenues of an item's definition. Those are defining the attributes and managing the item, and defining and managing the attributes for the item's lot or serial number. Attribute definitions provide the capability to find and manage those item characteristics for any number of elements that describe an item or a lot in such functions as lot attribute, purchase orders, sales orders, or production orders. Schema data includes character, decimal, integer functionality, along with date and logic formats. So what have we covered today? Well, we've talked about schemas, taxonomies, mnemonics, various coding tools, images, models, hierarchies, files, fields, attributes, number range management, generalized codes, supplemental analysis fields, reason codes, master and transactional comments, and auto numbering. Bernard Marr on LinkedIn, one of my favorites, talks about 5 skills that people are going to need in 2023 and beyond. Primary among these skills are the ability to communicate data, that is, be a storyteller. You should have skills in cybersecurity, in user experience design, digital marketing, and finally, augmenting work with artificial intelligence. Each of these has at its base the ability to recognize schemas in your environment and use those schemas and tools to maximize productivity. I did not have time today to discuss each of the functional areas in QAD that require some thought and identification of schemas in QAD. Here's a list of some of those areas which you might want to look at in terms of schema assignment. As we have said, schemas are ubiquitous in QAD. Here are some resources to learn more about and increase your skills in supply chain schemas. There are the QAD forums. In addition, the West Coast User Group and the Midwest User Group have excellent discussion and resource boards. There is the QAD Knowledge Base, the QAD Document Library, and the QAD Learning Center. As I mentioned before, here is a list of the URLs, complete with clickable links for all the slides, documents, records, and sites that I used for this presentation. Just click the URL link on the 32 website and you are brought to a list of URLs for various subjects regarding schemas that you might use to help better your understanding and use of data in your ERP system. Just a quick word about 32Soft data loaders. Once you have learned all there is to learn about the supply chain in QAD, you will come to the same conclusion I have, that ERP systems require a huge amount of data to be useful and accurate. 32Soft offers several, many, too many to list here, data loaders and applications that can assist you around most QAD functionality. From the production planner to sales order data, 32Soft data loaders use a familiar Excel format which makes the data easy to process in and out of QAD. There is a 60-day complimentary trial period along with simple installation. Christian, Andreas, and Olina are always there to help. 32Soft loaders work with all versions of QAD, from SE to the latest versions of EE and AUX. Please contact Alex or myself if you are interested. We hope you've enjoyed this quick overview of how to use schemas in various codes in QAD. Everyone in your organization should have a good understanding of the schemas used in your company so that input can be consistent and output and data retrieval optimized. All of our organizations rely on people to run their logistics and supply chain applications. Make yourself one of those successful assets. Please contact myself or Denise if you can think of any questions regarding QAD or coding after the webinar has closed, and we'll be glad to get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you so much, and back to you, Denise.
Thank you, Don. So for now, as mentioned, we will go ahead and move along and take a look at some of our upcoming events for webinars. In February, Don returns for Managing QAD Access Security. Don will review the QAD elements and provide a quick demonstration. Is that right, Don? You'll have a little demo? Okay.
Yeah, they're going to have a little demo, and we'll talk about some of the security aspects of audit trails and segregation of duty and some other tools that are available. So
super. Okay, wanted to make sure I didn't confuse any of that.
Yeah.
That's great. That'll be a great one. And then in March, we will be joined by colleagues who will share a case study success story with us. So hopefully you will be able to join us for both of those webinars. And then a little later in March, I think it's the following week actually, 32Soft will attend the QAD Midwest User Group Conference in Cleveland. So if you are attending, please be sure to swing by our booth and say hello. We should have more information about presentations if we're presenting at that conference by at least before our February webinar, probably sooner than that. So we will go ahead and move to our final thought for today. Of course, while it's still true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, the purpose of visualization is insight. And that is all we have for you today, I think. Don, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's all I've got. I find the manipulation of data in QAD fascinating. It's always been one of my fun things with QAD, as opposed to expediting and chasing parts, making QAD work, and as I said, making it a representation of reality, because that's what ERP is. We try to use ERP to make our world exist inside the computer at the absolute maximum of accuracy. That's the way we make ERP do what it's designed to do. So yeah, I appreciate all the attendees, and again, if there are any questions that you've got, just drop Denise and I an email, and we'd be glad to further discuss it. So thank you for your attention today.
Absolutely, as always. Thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And a big thank you, and welcome back to you too, Don. And we hope to see everybody again next month. Have a great day.
You guys too. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.